Carl Jung's secret to becoming psychologically untouchable. What if I told you that the person you think you are, that voice in your head, that identity you defend in arguments, that image you try to perfect on social media, is only a fragment of who you really are? That most of your suffering, your anxiety, your emotional reactivity isn't caused by the world outside of you, but by your refusal to meet the shadow within. Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers of the 20th century, didn't just analyze the mind, he stared into its abyss. And what he discovered wasn't just psychology, it was a path to becoming untouchable, not in the sense of arrogance or emotional numbness, but in the sense of becoming so deeply rooted in who you truly are that external chaos, criticism, and even heartbreak can't shake your core. But there's a cost to this kind of strength, and that cost is terrifying to most people because it requires facing everything about yourself you've tried to avoid. Let's start with a question. Why do you suffer when people insult you? Why do you spiral when someone rejects you? Why does anxiety grip you when you fear failure, or shame rise when you're seen as weak? Jung would say it's because those external events touch something inside you that's unresolved, something unconscious. You see, Jung believed that the unconscious isn't just a storage space for forgotten memories, it's alive, it's dynamic, it's a part of you that holds all the aspects of yourself you've repressed, denied, or disowned. He called this your shadow, not because it's evil or bad, but because it lives in darkness, outside of your conscious awareness.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
The shadow is everything you've been conditioned to hide. Your anger, your envy, your fear, your desire for power, your need for attention, your vulnerability. And here's the hard truth. The more you deny your shadow, the more power it has over you. The more you pretend to be only good, kind, humble, productive, or strong, the more your shadow will sabotage you from the inside out. It will leak out through passive aggression, burnout, compulsive behavior, addictions, and emotional overreactions. This is why you're not psychologically untouchable, because you're not whole. EXO's secret, if we really want to understand it, is that psychological resilience doesn't come from perfection. It comes from integration. It comes from confronting your inner darkness, not to destroy it, but to befriend it, to make peace with the parts of you that scare you, to become so self-aware, so radically honest that nothing someone says about you can surprise you. Because you've already met that part of yourself, you've sat with it, you've held its gaze. And by doing that, you take its power away. This is why truly self-aware people are so calm, not because they've escaped pain, but because they've faced it. They've walked through it. They've stopped running. And when you stop running from yourself, something extraordinary happens. You stop being controlled by what other people think of you. You stop needing constant validation. You stop reacting defensively. You stop living in fear of judgment because you've already judged yourself and survived it. You know who you are, not the mask, not the performance, the whole you. But this isn't easy. It's not glamorous. It's not quick. Shadow work requires courage. It requires humility. It requires sitting in silence without distraction and asking yourself questions most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Questions like, what part of me do I hate the most? What am I pretending not to feel? What do I secretly envy? Do I fear people will find out about me? And when you answer honestly, your ego will try to protect itself. It will say, that's not me. But Jung teaches us that it is you. And the moment you accept that, not with guilt, but with compassion, you begin to integrate it. You begin to heal. To become psychologically untouchable isn't to become invulnerable, it's to become transparent. To be so aligned with yourself that there's nothing left to hide. No secrets that can be used against you, no wounds you haven't already tended to, no lies you need to maintain. This is the power Jung offers us. Not the power to dominate others, but the power to no longer be dominated by our own unconscious. So let me ask you, what shadow are you running from, and what would your life look like if you turned around and faced it? The mirror is the monster. Why what you hate in others reveals what you've hidden in yourself. We live in a culture obsessed with pointing fingers. At politicians, at celebrities, at strangers online, at people we barely know but feel justified in judging. And yet, Carl Jung warned us long ago, what you hate in others is often a reflection of what you refuse to see in yourself. That's not a metaphor, that's not spiritual fluff, it's one of the most psychologically disturbing, liberating truths you will ever encounter, because when you realize that the monster outside is often the mirror inside, you're faced with an uncomfortable but world-changing question. What if my greatest enemy is the part of me I've disowned? Jung called this projection, and is one of the most fascinating, subtle, and destructive mechanisms of the human psyche. Here's how it works. You grow up learning what's acceptable, what gets you love, approval, safety. You also learn what's dangerous to express: anger, pride, greed, sensuality, vulnerability. So you push those unacceptable traits into your unconscious. You pretend they're not there. You build an identity that excludes them. But the psyche never forgets. And what it can't express inwardly, it throws outward. You start to see those denied traits in everyone else. You criticize the arrogance of others while secretly craving recognition. You condemn someone's emotional neediness while repressing your own longing to be held. You mock people's ambition while fearing your own failure. And here's the twist that's hard to swallow. The more intense your hatred of a trait in someone else, the more closely it's tied to your own shadow. That's why some people trigger you in ways that feel irrational. It's not them, it's your unconscious trying to wake you up, trying to show you the part of yourself you've buried so deeply that it can only be seen through the behaviors of others. This is why true self-awareness is so rare, because it requires taking responsibility for your judgments. It means that when someone annoys you, your first question becomes not, why are they like this, but why does this bother me so much? It demands you shift the spotlight inward, not to blame yourself, but to understand yourself. To ask, what am I being shown here? What is this reaction revealing about my own inner world? Think about it. How differently would you experience life if every emotional trigger became a teacher? If every person that irritated you was a mirror, showing you something you had refused to confront? This is not about excusing toxic behavior, it's about reclaiming your power. Because as long as your emotional reactions are dictated by what others do, you're not free, you're reactive. You're a puppet pulled by invisible strings, and Jung's work is the knife that can cut them Let's go deeper. Imagine you're in a conversation where someone is being arrogant. They're bragging about their accomplishments, dismissing your input, clearly trying to dominate the space. The usual response would be irritation, maybe even shutting down or lashing out. But Jung's path invites a different question. What part of me feels threatened here? And why? Is it because I secretly fear I'm not accomplished enough? Is it because I've been taught to suppress my own pride, and now I resent those who express theirs freely? Or is it because, deep down, I envy their confidence and wish I could own my worth like that? So I'll ask you something difficult. Who do you hate? Who annoys you the most? Whose presence makes your skin crawl? Now, what might they be reflecting back to you? What part of yourself have they exposed that you haven't yet made peace with? This is the path to becoming psychologically untouchable, not by avoiding discomfort, but by embracing it. Not by silencing your reactions, but by decoding them, because every judgment you make is an invitation to know yourself more deeply, and the more you do, the less power the world has to disturb your peace. The alchemy of shadow, turning inner darkness into indestructible strength. Carl Jung didn't just want us to understand our darkness, he wanted us to transform it. He believed that within the parts of ourselves we fear the most, within the shadows we hide, and the emotions we suppress, lies a hidden source of energy, raw, untapped, and potentially transcendent. And here's where it gets profound. Jung saw the shadow not as something to destroy, but as something to integrate, to transmute. Like the ancient alchemists who sought to turn lead into gold, Jung believed we could turn our psychological lead, our fears, our shame, our rage, into inner gold, into strength, clarity, wholeness, into a self that is not only resilient, but radiant. And how do we do that? Through the hard, sacred, and brutally honest work of inner alchemy. Let's be clear, we are not talking about becoming better people in the moralistic sense. We're not talking about repressing anger or pretending we're always calm and wise and kind. That's ego. That's the persona talking, the mask we wear to be accepted. Jung warned that the more we invest in our persona, the more power we give to our shadow. Because the persona is not who you are, it's who you think you should be, and the greater the gap between who you really are and who you pretend to be, the deeper your suffering becomes. Alchemy begins the moment you stop pretending, the moment you admit, I am not always kind. I want power. I judge, I fear, I desire, I ache to be seen. I long to be loved, even when I act like I don't care. That moment of radical honesty is the first spark of transformation, because when you stop resisting your humanity, you begin to reclaim the energy you've spent suppressing it. Jung taught that the shadow holds not only our darkness, but also our potential. Inside your anger, there may be unexpressed passion and the courage to draw boundaries. Inside your envy, a buried yearning for your own greatness. Inside your fear, an invitation to develop inner strength. But to access these gifts, you must go through the fire. You must look directly at what you've been running from. Not with judgment, but with compassion. This is not easy. It takes time, it takes solitude, it takes the willingness to listen to your nightmares, to explore the fantasies you're ashamed of, to write down the thoughts you wouldn't dare say aloud. But if you stay with it, if you keep walking through the inner cave, you will find something extraordinary. You are not broken. You are vast. And when you begin to integrate your shadow, something changes. You no longer need to prove yourself. You no longer need to control every situation. You no longer panic when someone doesn't like you, because you're no longer at the mercy of the unconscious forces within. You've taken back your power. You've turned what once controlled you into something you now carry with awareness. Think of it like taming a wild animal. At first, it frightens you. Then you learn to understand it, and soon it becomes your companion, your ally. That's what happens when you integrate your shadow. It doesn't disappear, but it stops running the show behind your back. Here's the paradox. The more you own your darkness, the more light you carry. Because true presence, true confidence, true psychological invincibility doesn't come from pretending to be perfect. It comes from knowing you're not and being okay with that. It comes from walking into the world without armor, because you've already made peace with the parts of yourself that others could use to wound you. You've seen your own worst thoughts, you've faced your shame, you've owned your rage, and because of that, you're no longer manipulable. You're no longer fragile. You're no longer afraid of being exposed, because there's nothing left to hide. So let me ask you, what if everything you've ever tried to suppress, your rage, your jealousy, your insecurity, wasn't a flaw, but a key? What if the very traits you've disowned were the gateway to becoming whole? This is the essence of Jung's alchemy. Not self-improvement, not perfection, but sacred integration. The courage to say, this too is me, and I choose to love it. This is how we become psychologically untouchable, not by avoiding the fire, but by walking through it, not by denying our shadow, but by making it part of our light. The final integration, how wholeness sets you free from the world's control. When Carl Jung said, "I'd rather be whole than good," he wasn't rejecting morality, he was challenging a deeper truth. That goodness without wholeness is fragile. It's performative. It collapses the moment life stops going your way. Wholeness, on the other hand, is indestructible. It means you've seen the fullness of who you are, your light and your darkness, and you've made peace with it. You don't need to defend yourself from criticism because you've already acknowledged your flaw. You don't need to hide your desires because you've already claimed them. And in a world that profits from your insecurity, your conformity, and your self-doubt, this level of integration makes you ungovernable from the outside, because you're not looking out there for answers anymore. You've found them in here. This is the final secret to becoming psychologically untouchable. You stop letting the world tell you who you are. You stop outsourcing your worth to likes, titles, or approval. You stop reacting to every opinion, every insult, every challenge, because you've already done the deeper work. You've gone inward. You face the chaos within. So when life throws chaos at you from the outside, it's just noise. It doesn't define you. It doesn't move you. Because you're anchored in something real. Yourself. Not the self you built to impress others, but the deeper self that was always there, waiting beneath the noise. And here's the paradox. The more deeply you know yourself, the more compassion you have for others. Because you've seen your own darkness, you stop judging other people for theirs. You become less reactive, less triggered, and more curious. You stop trying to control everything. You stop needing to fix everyone. You allow others to be who they are because you've accepted who you are. That's real freedom, not escaping the world, but no longer being enslaved by it. But none of this happens by accident. You have to choose it. You have to choose to stop running, choose to sit with yourself when it's uncomfortable, choose to ask the questions that scare you, choose to feel what you've avoided for years. Because shadow work isn't a technique, it's a way of being. A way of walking through life with eyes wide open, heart exposed, ego softened, and soul engaged. So ask yourself now, what part of me have I been afraid to meet? What would change if I stopped trying to be good and started trying to be whole? Because when you become whole, you become free. And when you're free, nothing can touch you. Not because you're untouchable in the shallow sense, but because you've already touched everything within yourself. There's nothing left to fear, nothing left to hide, only truth, only presence, only peace. That, my friend, is Jung's final gift. Not a map to perfection, but a portal to wholeness. And once you walk through it, the world can never control you again.